For as long as we've gazed up at the night sky, one question has echoed in every age, in every tongue, in every heart. Are we alone? It's a question as ancient as the stars themselves, and perhaps just as patient. Every time humanity invents a new way to look deeper into the cosmos, we're really searching for ourselves, for some reflection, some distant pulse that whispers, "You are not unique." And if life could arise not just once, but twice within the same solar system, then life as we know it would no longer be a miracle. It would be a rule. For centuries, Mars has haunted our imagination. From myth to science fiction, it's been the mirror of our hope and our fear. Early astronomers thought they saw canals, built by civilizations beyond our own. Later, our robotic eyes revealed nothing but red deserts in ruin, a dead world. But then came a revelation that changed everything. Mars once had rivers, lakes, even seas. It was, long ago, a planet alive with liquid water. And where there's water, there might once have been life. So NASA decided to ask the question again. Not from Earth, not through telescopes, but from the crimson soil of Mars itself. And for that, they built a machine like no other. Its name was Perseverance. Launched on a summer morning in July 2020, Perseverance rode a pillar of fire into the dark. It wasn't just a rover. It was the embodiment of centuries of longing, wrapped in metal, circuits, and human hope. It carried within it a story, the story of us. Its journey took 7 long months through the cold silence between worlds. Behind it, Earth spun, growing smaller, fainter. Ahead of it, Mars waited, red, mysterious, ancient. Between the two, 480 million kilometers of uncertainty. Every bolt, every sensor, every whisper of code on board was a promise that one day we'd touch another world, not to conquer it, but to understand it. The descent through the Martian atmosphere would be the most dangerous 7 minutes of the mission, a ballet between fire, metal, and gravity. At over 19,000 kilometers per hour, the spacecraft slammed into Mars' thin air. Its heat shield glowed like a miniature sun, 1,300 degrees Celsius of friction and faith. Then, a parachute exploded open, patterned in secret binary code. Dare mighty things. The motto of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. A call to courage hidden in plain sight. At 10 kilometers above the surface, the heat shield fell away, and Perseverance looked out, seeing Mars for the very first time. Its cameras captured the dusty expanse below, a world silent for billions of years, now witnessing a visitor from the stars. Then came the final act, the Sky Crane, an audacious invention that lowered Perseverance on cables like a newborn lowered gently into a cradle of dust. And on February 18, 2021, the rover's wheels touched Martian ground. For the first time, humanity had placed a piece of itself into a place where rivers once ran, and where the faint ghosts of life might still linger, hidden in the stone. Perseverance landed in a place called Jezero Crater, a scar in the planet's face carved by ancient floods. Billions of years ago, it was a lake, a place where rivers once carried sediment, the same sediment that might hold the chemical fingerprints of life. This was no random spot. This was the most promising place on Mars to search for our cosmic reflection. And Perseverance, NASA's most advanced rover ever built, was there to uncover it. To understand just how advanced this rover was, imagine a car-sized laboratory equipped with laser spectrometers, microscopic imagers, and drills capable of cutting through alien stone. It could analyze minerals, weather, and atmosphere, and even create oxygen from carbon dioxide. A small experiment called MOXIE would test if one day astronauts could breathe the Martian air or even make rocket fuel to come home. But Perseverance wasn't alone. Hidden beneath its belly, nestled like a secret, was something small, fragile, and unprecedented. A second traveler, a companion. Its name was Ingenuity. A tiny helicopter, no bigger than a shoebox, lighter than 2 loaves of bread. It was a dream that even NASA thought might fail, because Mars's atmosphere is 100 times thinner than Earth's, so thin that a normal helicopter would simply spin in vain. But Ingenuity's blades spun at over 2,400 revolutions per minute, a whisper of air beneath its carbon fiber wings. On April 19, 2021, the little helicopter rose, 3 meters off the ground, and hovered in the thin alien breeze. For the first time in history, a machine had flown on another world, and Perseverance captured every second, watching like a proud parent witnessing its child's first steps. Back on Earth, engineers cheered. Decades of human dreams had just taken flight in the dust of another planet. That short 39-second hop would change everything. Because from that moment, Mars wasn't just a place we could land on. It was a place we could explore from above. And Ingenuity kept flying, long after its first test, long after its planned 5 flights. It became Perseverance's scout, a quiet, tireless guide through the dunes and dangers ahead. Together, they would begin one of the most ambitious searches in the history of science. They were going hunting for the traces of ancient life. But Mars, like truth, rarely gives up her secrets easily. What Perseverance would find next would surprise, frustrate, and humble even the best minds on Earth. It turns out, the rocks of Mars had stories of their own to tell. And they didn't give them up without a fight.
When Perseverance began to roll across the Jezero Crater, it wasn't just moving over rocks, it was moving through time. Every ridge, every grain of dust beneath its wheels was a page in a planetary diary, a record of a world that once might have been alive. From orbit, Jezero looked simple, a round basin, 45 kilometers across. But from the ground, Perseverance saw something different. Layered cliffs, dried riverbeds, fractured plains, all carved by water that vanished billions of years ago. This wasn't just ancient geology. This was evidence of transformation. A story written in minerals and silence. The rover's instruments began to hum to life. Its robotic arm extended, precise, steady, almost human. With laser pulses and X-ray beams, Perseverance began reading the stones like hieroglyphs. Each burst of data, a clue. And the first surprise came quickly. The rocks beneath its wheels weren't what scientists expected. They weren't soft sedimentary layers from a calm lakebed. They were volcanic, basalt, born of fire, not water. This meant Jezero's history was more violent than anyone had imagined. Mars, long thought to be a still and sleeping world, once burned with fire. Beneath its surface, magma had surged and cooled, leaving behind crystals of olivine and pyroxene, minerals that could only form in extreme heat. The presence of these volcanic rocks changed everything. Because if Jezero's floor was once molten, it could be dated precisely. By measuring how the elements decayed over time, scientists could finally measure the age of Mars's surface, a cosmic timestamp buried in stone. But then came the real shock. Even in these volcanic rocks, Perseverance's instruments detected faint chemical signatures of water. Microscopic traces sealed in crystal. Proof that long after the lava cooled, water had flowed through the fractures, changing the minerals from within. That meant Mars didn't just have a wet past, it had a long one. The planet had remained geologically active, its hidden reservoirs perhaps feeding rivers that lasted millions of years longer than scientists once believed. Each new discovery deepened the mystery, because where there's persistent water, there's a stable environment, and where conditions remain stable, life can emerge. Not maybe like ours, not with lungs or limbs or eyes, but microbial, invisible life. Tiny chemical survivors written into the pores of ancient stone. That's what Perseverance was built to find. Not fossils, not creatures, but the fingerprints of something that once breathed the Martian air in a world long since turned to dust. To do that, Perseverance began drilling. Its titanium cores spun into the red ground, biting deep. Each core sample, a time capsule preserved for the future. For the first time, humanity was collecting Mars itself and storing it in sealed tubes that one day, if all goes well, will be returned to Earth. That return mission, still years away, will be the most ambitious project in planetary history, because hidden in those samples might lie the greatest revelation of all time, proof that life is not a miracle, but a pattern. But as Perseverance roamed further, it became clear that Jezero Crater was no simple lakebed. It was a mosaic of ancient environments, lava plains, delta fans, and eroded ridges, each shaped by different forces. One region drew particular attention, the delta. Seen from orbit, it looked like a fossilized river mouth, a place where sediments had fanned out into the lake billions of years ago. If life ever existed here, that delta was where it would have gathered, and where it might still be preserved. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The route was treacherous, steep, rocky, unpredictable, and Mars, with its storms and cold, was not a forgiving host. For months, engineers planned every move from millions of kilometers away. Every wheel rotation, every arm extension had to be simulated, checked, transmitted across the void. A one-way radio signal to Mars takes up to 22 minutes. By the time Perseverance receives a command, it's already outdated. So the rover learned to think for itself. Using onboard AI, it could navigate autonomously, scanning terrain, avoiding hazards, making decisions without human hands. Each movement was an act of trust, a partnership between human curiosity and machine intelligence. And slowly, carefully, Perseverance began its climb toward the ancient delta. As the rover moved, its cameras captured breathtaking panoramas. Endless plains scattered with boulders, the faint outline of distant cliffs, and above it all, the thin, pink sky. From that lonely world, the sun looked small, a pale disk barely bright enough to cast a shadow. And every evening as the light faded, Perseverance would stop, turn its cameras upward, and take one last image of the horizon. Sometimes Earth would appear, a single pale blue spark hanging in the dark. Home. Billions of kilometers away. When you look at those images, you realize something. We're the only planet that looks back. Every robot, every probe we've sent into the void, they're not just machines. They're extensions of our gaze, our longing to understand. Perseverance isn't exploring for itself. It's exploring for us. And as it rolled onward toward the delta, no one could have predicted that what it found there would rewrite our understanding of Mars's past and perhaps our future on it.
After months of crawling over barren plains and volcanic ridges, Perseverance finally stood before the delta, a towering relic, layered, fractured, and ancient. The remains of a river that once carried water, silt, and perhaps life into Jezero's vanished lake. From orbit, it looked majestic, but up close, the delta was something else entirely. A cathedral of stone carved by time itself. Each stratum a chapter in the story of Mars, each layer whispering of floods, droughts, and rebirths. And as Perseverance extended its robotic arm to begin sampling, scientists back on Earth held their breath. This was the most promising location in the entire mission. If Mars ever nurtured life, this was where the evidence would hide. The delta was unlike anything Perseverance had encountered before. Jagged cliffs loomed overhead, their surfaces streaked with veins of minerals. Boulders, carried by long-vanished torrents, rested impossibly on ridges. These weren't gentle deposits, they were signs of power. Ancient rivers that once surged with enough force to move mountains. This was no tranquil lake. It was a living system, dynamic, chaotic, alive. Perseverance began drilling again, extracting rock cores from the base of the delta. As its instruments analyzed the results, a wave of excitement rippled through NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Inside the samples were organics. Organic molecules, the building blocks of life. Carbon-based compounds that, on Earth, form the chemistry of existence. Now, to be clear, these weren't fossils or microbes, but their presence meant something profound. The chemistry of life had once been possible here. It was as if Mars had been given the same raw ingredients as Earth, but something, somewhere, went differently. The spark that became biology on our planet may have flickered and died on Mars. Or perhaps it still lingers deep below the surface, waiting to be found. The discovery of organics wasn't the only surprise. The rocks also showed evidence of sustained interaction with liquid water. Not a single flood, but cycles of wet and dry, spanning millions of years. That meant Jezero's lake was stable. It endured. It wasn't a brief oasis. It was a world with seasons, chemistry, and time enough for something extraordinary to evolve. For scientists, this changed everything. Mars wasn't just a failed planet, it was a nearly successful one. Perseverance began its slow climb higher into the delta, capturing images that looked eerily familiar. Rounded pebbles, rippled sandstones, patterns identical to those seen in Earth's ancient riverbeds. It was as if Mars had once been Earth-like, with skies of blue, shallow streams winding through valleys. A world where, billions of years ago, someone could have stood and seen water shimmering under a pale sun. And now that same world is silent, frozen, red, a graveyard of lost potential. But even in that silence, Perseverance was not alone. Orbiters circling above acted as its eyes in the sky, mapping routes and relaying every byte of data back to Earth. And beside it, its small companion, Ingenuity, the helicopter, prepared for another flight. It was the first aircraft ever to fly on another planet. And as its tiny blades spun, lifting it into the thin Martian air, humanity's presence expanded, not just across the ground, but into the Martian sky. From above, Ingenuity saw Perseverance as a distant dot, a small tire-marked trail behind it, stretching across the desert. Together, they were explorers, one crawling, one flying, charting a world no human has ever touched. The helicopter's footage revealed something unexpected. Patterns in the delta that looked disturbingly familiar. fan-shaped sediment structures identical to river deltas on Earth. This was confirmation. Jezero wasn't just a crater. It was a place that had flowed, a system that once cycled water, dust, and time. And wherever water flowed, life might have followed. But there was one more twist waiting in the rocks. At higher elevations, Perseverance found evidence of salts, minerals formed when water evaporates. These salts preserve chemical traces of whatever the water once carried. If microbial life ever existed in Jezero, it might have left microscopic fossils locked inside those crystals. That realization sent a chill through everyone working on the mission, because those samples, the ones now sealed within the rover's titanium tubes, might already contain the answer. We just won't know until they come home. Billions of kilometers away, Perseverance rests quietly on the delta, waiting for its next command. Its sensors hum softly in the cold. Its cameras stare at the horizon. The wind brushes dust over its solar panels. It doesn't know what it's found. It doesn't need to, because it was never about the machine understanding. It was about us, the species that built it, that sent it across the void, that asked for the first time in history, are we alone? Maybe the answer is already there, locked inside a rock, sealed in a tube, waiting for our return. Or maybe the answer has always been within us, in our need to explore, to question, to reach for worlds that will never reach back. Perseverance's mission isn't just about Mars. It's about who we are and what we'll do to find meaning among the stars.
In the silence of Jezero Crater, Perseverance continues to roam. Every wheel rotation, every camera click, every whisper of dust against its body is part of a greater human story. We built this machine not to conquer, but to understand, to hold a mirror to the universe and ask, what does it take for a world to be alive? And in that question lies something deeper, a reflection of our own longing, our own mortality. Because when we look at Mars, we aren't just looking at another planet. We're looking at what Earth could become, a silent, empty echo of everything that once breathed. Perseverance's mission isn't endless. One day it will fall silent. The cold will seep in. Its instruments will freeze, and the wind will bury its tracks beneath red dust. But long before that, it will leave something behind, a legacy that will outlive us all. Dozens of titanium tubes scattered across the crater floor, each one containing a fragment of Mars's deep history. Together they are a time capsule, not of Earth, but of Mars itself. And those samples will not remain there forever, because another mission, one of the most ambitious in human history, is already being prepared. It's called the Mars Sample Return, a collaboration between NASA and the European Space Agency. This mission will send a lander, a small rocket, and another rover to Jezero Crater. Their purpose? To find Perseverance's cached samples, gather them up, and launch them off the surface of Mars, back toward Earth. It will be the first time in history that humanity launches a rocket from another planet. A small capsule, no larger than a soccer ball, will carry pieces of Mars across millions of miles of empty space. When it lands, scientists will study those rocks in ways Perseverance never could, using microscopes, mass spectrometers, and tools capable of detecting life itself. That return will answer a question older than civilization. Are we alone? But even if we find nothing, no fossils, no microbes, no traces of life, the search itself will remain sacred. Because science isn't only about finding answers, it's about asking better questions. And each discovery, each mystery, pushes us closer to understanding our own fragile existence. In that sense, Mars is not just a destination, it's a reminder, a warning, a possibility. From orbit, Mars looks so still, but beneath its surface, it holds the memory of something once alive. Perhaps water still flows. Perhaps microbes sleep in the shadows of underground caves. And if life ever did exist there, it means the universe is not a lonely place. It means that what happened here on Earth is not a miracle, it's a pattern written into the fabric of the cosmos itself. And maybe that's what draws us back to Mars, again and again. Not the minerals, not the dust, but the story. A story that mirrors our own evolution. From fire to flight, from dreaming to doing, we've always looked up and wondered, what's next? Mars is not an end. It's the next chapter of our cosmic biography. A bridge between the world that birthed us and the ones we have yet to call home. But if we are to walk those red plains someday, we must learn from perseverance, to move slowly, to observe deeply, to listen before we speak. Because Mars doesn't need another conqueror. It needs a student, a caretaker, a being humble enough to see beauty in desolation. And perhaps that's what this mission truly teaches us. That exploration isn't about leaving footprints. It's about leaving meaning.
In the thin, cold air of Mars, a lonely machine keeps vigil. Its name is Perseverance. But what it represents is far greater than metal, code, and wheels. It represents us, our curiosity, our stubborn hope, our belief that knowledge, no matter how distant, is worth the risk of reaching. Narrator. When Perseverance looks up, it doesn't see a sky like ours. There are no birds, no clouds, no blue. Only a pale, dusty orange stretching endlessly. And yet, somewhere, millions of kilometers away, on a small blue planet, we are watching through its eyes. Every image it sends is a heartbeat. Every signal is a whisper across space, saying, I am here, and so are you. Narrator. What Perseverance has found is not just rock and dust, it's evidence of time, of history, of worlds that change just as we do. Once, rivers carved through Jezero Crater. They carried minerals, clay, and perhaps even life. Then the planet cooled, the water vanished, and silence took its place. But now, through this rover, the silence speaks again. Music swells gently, a tone of revelation. Narrator. Among the basaltic stones, scientists found signs of a violent past, volcanic layers intertwined with sediments shaped by water. That means Mars wasn't just a frozen desert. It was a living, breathing world with fire beneath and rivers above. And the samples Perseverance will one day send home could tell the full story of how a planet lived, died, and still remembers. Soft transition. Music fades into a reflective, almost spiritual tone. Narrator. Sometimes the universe doesn't give us answers. Sometimes it gives us questions that change who we are. Mars has done that to us. It has forced us to ask, what makes a world alive? Is it water? Is it biology? Or is it memory? The way a planet remembers its own storms and silences. Narrator. Perseverance, in its quiet determination, reminds us that discovery is not about speed, it's about patience.
It's about listening. It's about waiting for the universe to trust us with its secrets. Every photograph, every sample, every faint vibration in its instruments is the planet's way of saying, "I'm not finished yet." And deep swell of music rises, a feeling of triumph and reverence intertwined. Narrator. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't only Mars's story. Maybe it's humanity's reflection, a reminder that even when our own world feels fragile, we still reach for something beyond ourselves. We persevere. That's why the rover was named that, not because it never stops, but because it continues even when everything around it says it shouldn't. Music builds to its emotional climax, strings and piano in harmony. Narrator. One day, long after the last transmission, long after its batteries fade and its instruments grow cold, Perseverance will still be there, standing in the crater it once explored. A monument not just to science, but to humanity's unbreakable need to understand. Future explorers may find it buried in dust. They may touch its faded surface and remember that this was where we began, our first real steps towards becoming a multiplanetary species. The music softens. Only a single piano note lingers. Narrator. In the end, Perseverance did more than study Mars. It reminded us what it means to be human, to look at the unknown and instead of fear, to feel wonder, to reach out, not for survival, but for meaning. Somewhere in the distance, the dust still drifts across Jezero Crater. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the quiet hum of a lonely machine that carried our dreams to another world. For all humanity who still dare to look up,